The modern skyline of Hartford, Connecticut features gleaming high-rises and sprawling mixed-use complexes. Some of these structures are iconic examples of mid-century modern design. Others get more mixed reviews, and some are mainly seldom-used expanses of concrete. Whatever your opinion about the aesthetics of Hartford's building boom of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, these edifices didn't spring up on empty ground. They replaced old neighborhoods that had defined downtown Hartford for generations, beloved historic areas that had been home to waves of immigrants who'd started successful businesses and raised their families along the busy streets of Hartford. By the 1950s, some of these neighborhoods' buildings may not have been in the best shape, but if more of them had survived, they could have eventually been rehabilitated, and more of the city would have a walkable human scale today. Instead, the city engaged in massive redevelopment, obliterating block after block of old Hartford to create the current built environment that we either admire or revile today. This is History with me, Dan Sterner. Remember to hit that subscribe button as we explore downtown Hartford's 5 worst neighborhood obliterations. Number 5. Located between Asylum, Trumbull, Pearl, and Haynes Street, the CityPlace complex of the early 1980s includes Hartford's tallest building, CityPlace 1, which is also the tallest skyscraper in New England outside Boston. It dominates the city's skyline, but it's now half empty and in foreclosure in the wake of office downsizing trends accelerated by the pandemic. The rise of CityPlace obliterated a group of earlier buildings along Asylum and Pearl Streets. Maybe they weren't the greatest examples of architecture the city had to offer, but they represented several layers of Hartford's urban development over more than a century, from the mansard-roofed extravagance of the Gilded Age to 2 structures from a 1920s building boom that flanked a slender remnant of the 1890s. Asylum Street was lined with small businesses that included the beloved Hartford institution Frank's Restaurant. What replaced all of this was a skyscraper that rose higher than the nearby Travelers Tower, but did it improve the character of the city at street level? We can be grateful that the high-rise next door, Goodwin Place, preserved at least the facade of architect Francis Kimball's exuberant Queen Anne-style Goodwin building, which forms its base, along with the adjacent examples of historic cast-iron facades. Number 4. Just north of CityPlace, surrounded by Church, Asylum, Trumbull, and Ann Uccello streets, is the massive XL Center, which also has the more recent addition of the Hartford 21 building. The XL Center was originally built in the 1970s as the Hartford Civic Center and was once the home of the beloved Hartford Whalers. But long before this land was cleared to build the mighty arena, these streets were lined with landmarks of old Hartford. By the late 1960s, the once grand Allen House at the corner of Asylum and Trumbull Streets may have seen better days, but in the previous century it had been the city's leading hotel and a benchmark for Gilded Age elegance. In the days when downtown boasted numerous movie theaters, audiences flocked to E.M. Lowe's and the Allen. And before it was gutted in a devastating fire, the former Hartford Life Insurance Company building was a model of dramatic 19th century ornamentation. On nearby Ann Street, old buildings included a historic firehouse. And not for the first time, an entire block of a street, in this case Allen Street, was wiped from the map of the city in service of urban renewal. Number 3. Downtown Hartford, north of Morgan and Chapel Streets, has gained new life in recent years. With the rise of Duncan Park, home of the Hartford Yard Goats, and next door the Pennant Apartments. Next to that, the hotel building, erected originally as a Holiday Inn, is now the Millennium Apartments. These buildings stand in an area that was almost completely wiped out in the 1960s when the interstate highway plowed right through the city. But this area was once the continuation of the downtown shopping district, densely lined with small businesses, and nearby were residential areas off Windsor and Village Streets. The demolished area was also once home to entertainment venues like the Daly and New Parsons Theaters and the legendary State Theater, which was once the largest in New England. For decades, audiences flocked to the State to see the biggest names in show business, from the big band era to the beginnings of rock and roll. Rich with history, this area was leveled and much of it remained bleak for years until the recent redevelopment. Number 2. Another redevelopment where a street disappeared was on the west side of Main Street, across from the Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art and Hartford's Municipal Building. Created in the 1960s, Bushnell Plaza includes an IMP design apartment tower, the headquarters of the Metropolitan District Water Utility, and a vast expanse of concrete. This block of Main Street was once one of Hartford's busiest, with numerous shops, markets, and restaurants. It was an entertainment center that had 2 theaters built by the Connecticut impresario Sylvester Poli that were later owned by the Loews theater chain. On the western side of this area, facing Bushnell Park, was the stylish Hubline Hotel, a staple of Hartford nightlife. Erected by a German immigrant family that became nationally known as liquor importers and distributors. Mulberry Street, long a center for the city's German Americans, was completely lost when this area was leveled and replaced by Bushnell Plaza. Number 1. Hartford's most storied lost neighborhood was the Old East Side, centered on Front Street. The north section of this district was wiped away for the city's most substantial and well-known example of mid-century urban renewal, Constitution Plaza. A vast development, Constitution Plaza is an icon of the architectural taste of its time. When it was built, it had a hotel, office towers, and a television and radio studio. Its creators hoped to revitalize the city with a new modern core fashioned in the international style. Rising above the surrounding streets, its raised walkways led to the elevated plaza, which featured fountains, open courtyards, and public seating areas. Here it was hoped pedestrians could find refuge from the congested streets below. But the design only served to isolate the plaza from the natural street grid, and the focus on offices and corporate spaces led it to being a dead zone on evenings and weekends. This top-down planned development was never fully integrated into Hartford's urban fabric. The same pattern is continued in the south section of the Old East Side, south of State Street, where the Phoenix Insurance Building and Connecticut Science Center are located. Rising at the same time as Constitution Plaza, the Phoenix Building, often referred to as the Boat Building, was designed by Max Abramovitz and is revered as the world's first 2-sided building, a bold and revolutionary modernist structure. But like Constitution Plaza and Bushnell Plaza, it rests on a brutalist concrete platform that separates it from street level. A similar pattern is continued with the Connecticut Science Center across the street. Designed by Cesar Pelli and opened in 2009, it is also situated on a platform and is nestled next to the highway. While it does have pedestrian connections to the nearby Convention Center, Bulkley Bridge, and Mortenson Riverfront Plaza, it is still isolated from the natural flow of foot traffic down below. How different things were before the late 1950s, when the old East Side's dense warren of streets with numerous low-rise buildings welcomed generations of immigrants, some of whom built successful businesses here. Front Street is well remembered as Hartford's original Little Italy, with markets and popular eateries like Mickey's, Pippi's, and De Pasquale's. There were also many businesses run by Jewish immigrants. All of this, from the Connecticut River west to Front Street and up to Market Street, was swept away. City planners were confident they were clearing deteriorating areas and replacing them with sleek, modern, and pedestrian-friendly zones. These areas have not always lived up to what their creators envisioned and never achieved the full vitality they sought. If more of what was destroyed had been saved, could these lost Hartford neighborhoods have been revitalized today with more individual-scaled streetscapes? Now that they are gone, we will never know, but feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.